Hello, it's Martin from Wisely Automotive, and today you join me just as I picked up this BMW i3S. It's a very highly specified example. Of course, we have the widescreen infotainment, the sunroof, the sweet leather interior, comfort access, but most importantly, the reason why we are starting this video in the dark, the upgraded Icon Matrix LED headlights. This is particularly impressive on cars like, for example, Polestar 2, which we already featured on the channel, which includes 84 individually controlled LEDs per headlight. However, the technical information is quite sparse for these i3s, but I believe the underlying technology is shared with Minis, and they feature a much simpler setup with only 4 segments per headlight. So in this video we will once and for all see how they work in practice. Before going onto the road, I thought a little history lesson would be in order. So let's start with the base level system for pre-facelift cars. And that consists basically of an entirely halogen setup with the exception of daytime running lights. So with the i3, you've got a very distinct U-shaped daytime running light that features LEDs. However, even that setup, while standard in the UK, was optional in some other markets where you would get halogen daytime running lights. Luckily, BMW was not that stingy over here, but you still get a halogen bulb for the dipped beam, and counterintuitively, this is not the fog light, this is the high beam, and in the corner you do have the indicator as well, all halogen. If you paid extra back in the early days, you would get the upgraded LED lights. And in fact, if you look closely, there is the adaptive LED inscription inside of them. But the adaptive bit is a little bit misleading because the whole adaptiveness just basically means that they have automatic leveling, whereas with the previous setup, you would have a dial on the dashboard to level them manually depending on how much load you have in the back of the vehicle. You can see that we have different technology happening on the inside, and that's because we have an LED projector for the dipped beam, but lower down in the bumper, the high beam and the indicators are unchanged, so you still have halogen bulbs. And some people complain that when you put on the high beam, there is a little bit of a difference in color temperature between the dipped beam, which is quite cool being LED, and the halogen being quite warm, but I'm afraid there is no way around this other than fitting third-party bulbs. Moving onto the facelifts, you get proper full LED technology as standard. So if you look here at the bumper, you will see that the design has been a little bit streamlined, and you get these wide, slim lights in the bottom section. This is now just indicators featuring LEDs, and the high beam has been moved into the main headlight cluster. So you've got high beam and dipped beam combined in the same projector featuring LEDs. BMW removed the adaptive LED branding because they realized it's not quite as adaptive as the rest of their lineup. And if you paid extra on a facelift, you would get these lights, which this video is all about, the so-called Icon LEDs. That's where you've got the adaptive branding now. And the easy way to spot them is that if you look into the headlight clusters, you get a chrome outline around the projector. At this point with the facelifts, you get auto leveling, but on top of that, with the highest tier package, you also get the high beam assistant, which dips the beam when it detects traffic, but having matrix technology on board, it can still leave some sections of the high beam active, and we will see that in a second in practice. On top of that, once again, you also get cornering lights. These are situated inside of the main cluster, and when you turn the steering wheel, they will illuminate whichever direction you are going in at low speeds. That's enough of the theory, let's actually start driving. And the first interesting thing happens before the high beams even come on, because unlike the standard i3 LED lights, these upgraded clusters include cornering lights. So at low speeds, when you turn the steering wheel, that section of the road is illuminated. Let's be honest, this is nothing particularly special, but something to point out is that unlike other manufacturers, it's not the fog lights which are used for this. So even with this highest lighting package, there are still no front fog lights on the i3. And secondly, even if you put the indicator on, those lights don't come on. It's strictly tied to the steering inputs. But now let's actually get onto some country roads and try out the high beams. So to activate them, there is an automatic high beam button on the left stalk. Unlike on i3s with the basic light, the stalk end is split into two sections essentially, and the bottom one enables the automatic high beam. So to actually understand what's happening, when the lights are in standby mode, you get the green automatic high beam symbol in the top left of the instrument cluster. However, the moment at least a section of the high beam becomes activated, you also get a second traditional blue high beam symbol. So for example, now we have got the full beam active, but there's some traffic ahead, so the car decided to go into a fully dipped beam. But now the left side is empty, that is illuminated using our high beam. So you can see how far those bushes on the left are illuminated. Now the right side is illuminated. Now a tunnel is created for the vehicles ahead. And when those pass, the full beam will be re-established again on the right side. So for it not being the newest system out there, it is actually performing quite well. And the camera, as you saw there, seems to be wide angle enough that it catches cars even in pretty steep bends. And even with that car ahead partially occluded by that street sign, the i3 didn't struggle at all. And the reaction time seems to be fantastic. I haven't been flashed so far. Now this is a tricky scenario, you see, so there is a car ahead and in the side street, but none of those were blinded. And it's particularly scenarios like these on these country roads where these lights come into their own, because even though we have got some traffic ahead of us, the left side of the road is fully illuminated at all times. And you may say, yes, it is nice to have, but is it really necessary? Well, number one, it makes driving more comfortable. You have got better visibility. And if there is, for example, some animal hiding in the bush, your odds are with you that you will be able to spot it early and avoid a potential accident. However, for the sake of completeness, I do need to mention a downside, and that is that in scenarios like these, you see that because the matrix system has a relatively low resolution with only those few segments per each headlight, if there is some traffic on the road, the car can't quite copy what's happening precisely, because obviously there's only so much freedom to adjust the light beam. Likewise, as we go through these curves, even if I turn my steering wheel sharply, there is no left and right movement of the light projectors. So the adaptiveness of these lights is achieved using the automatic leveling in the vertical axis and just by dimming individual LEDs within the high beam across the horizontal axis, with obviously the little support lights on the sides as well. I hope the performance comes across well in the footage. It's one of those things which is always difficult to show on video, and it's much easier once you experience them. But I can tell you they are doing a good job, and even beyond the adaptiveness, the spread is good, the uniformity is quite good. There is still a slightly distinct line between the dipped beam and the high beam, but this is quite common for many of these almost spotlight focused LED headlights in modern vehicles. The color temperature is quite good. It's not too blue or cool like old Xenons used to be. So especially considering that the i3 was primarily designed as a city car, you really can't ask for more. And again, an interesting situation there. Even as those lorries were parked on the side with all of their headlights turned off, the car was still able to recognize the cabins and dip that section of the beam accordingly. So this is the scenario where I personally find them the most useful. You've got some traffic ahead of you which you're following, and the car essentially creates a tunnel in the middle of the beam with the left and right sides illuminated on these country roads. So you really have as much visibility as possible, and sometimes if the cars ahead of you, like right now, don't have their high beams on, the high beams of the i3 can actually sometimes shine past the lights ahead of you. But the system leaves enough of a margin on the vehicles ahead to make sure that the drivers are not blinded by the bright lights reflecting into their wing mirrors. The cornering light, for example, is really helping now. But that's enough of country road driving. I will tuck in behind this stunning Taycan ahead of me, set the adaptive cruise control, and we will see how the system performs on these dual carriageways. Because this is honestly where some of the systems can struggle, and especially once they detect too much traffic, instead of trying to adapt the shape of the high beam, they simply give up and they go into the dip beam. But so far, look, there's so many cars ahead, but the hard shoulder and all of these bushes on the side are still illuminated using the high beam. It should be really nicely visible. You can see the moment the high beam kicked in and illuminated the trees, but there is no high beam action happening on the right hand side. Oh, I love these i3s. Even after all of these years, the go-karty character is absolutely fantastic. And now it's shining across onto the right-hand side, but the moment the cars started coming towards us, that section got dimmed. And yeah, so far I have nothing more to add. The system is performing as it should. And let's see, even now it's shining through the gap in traffic on the left. Beautifully done. However, it really doesn't like firing up on sections of roads with street lighting, especially strong street lighting like this. There was plenty of opportunity to illuminate the left-hand side. I was doing over 40 miles per hour, but nothing happened. And this will be the biggest challenge, the M40, because it's obviously quite a wide road. However, it doesn't have a concrete central barrier. And let's enable adaptive cruise as well. And now all I have to do is sit here, relax, and enjoy the journey. Even the adaptive cruise seems to be working well in these low light conditions, which is particularly impressive given it's purely camera based and it only uses a single relatively low resolution camera with low end processing from essentially 2014, as that part of the i3 was never upgraded throughout its entire lifetime. Let's conclude with some consumer buying advice then. Look, there is no denying these headlights are better than the standard headlights. However, because they feature a relatively simple matrix design with not a high degree of adaptiveness, I really would say they are not a must-have. Combine this with the fact that there are only very few i3s on the used market and you can't spec a new one anymore, which have these lights fitted. In our opinion, it's not worth narrowing down your search just for the sake of these icon LEDs, even if you live in the middle of countryside and do a lot of nighttime driving. However, when they do pop up, they are usually on examples like this one, on a car which is almost fully loaded, so it is that extra cherry on top. If you're still absolutely set on having them and you have a similar budget to the i3 and are looking for a car with similar characteristics, we would recommend looking at the Mini Electric, specifically the F56, so the previous generation compared to the latest one, in the level 3 trim. Because with those cars, matrix lights are bundled into the level 3 package, so you have a much wider pool to choose from. With the little caveat that not all of them actually come with the matrix lights because of the COVID supply shortages, so just make sure with your supplying dealer that the particular car has them. With us, we are BMW i and Mini Electric specialists, so we know what we're talking about. If you ask us, we will definitely be able to give you the answer on any of our stock cars. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like the video if you found it helpful and if you found the demonstration interesting. If you want to learn more about the i3 and which options are actually worth picking, make sure to check out this video. And if you want to learn more about these cars in general, make sure to subscribe not to miss future content. Thanks again and see you in the next one.